Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. So this class will be an introduction to your syllabus specifically for math section. So math section basically consists of grade 11th and grade 12th maths. Let's discuss few of the topics, what kind of things that we have to study in that particular chapter, and then we'll see what are the more important points that we have to cover in particular chapter. So the first chapter is sets. Okay, so sets basically will talk about what is a set, what are their representation. We'll talk about different types of sets. Okay, then the numbers, natural number, whole number, they are also kind of a set. So how they are being categorized. And if I have to consider the most important topic of this chapter, that will be your Venn diagram. One of the most important topic, because that concept goes way too much in depth, I'll say. Rest will talk about union and intersection. This union and intersection will help you a lot when it comes to we'll talk about probabilities. Okay, so first you have to do sets. If you understand union and intersection, then we'll talk about the probabilities of different events, their unions, their intersection. What is the meaning basically of union and intersection? Okay. The second chapter, that will be a relation function. So relation function is if you have certain values of x and certain values of y, what kind of relation can be established, what kind of relation is actually a function. We'll talk about Cartesian products of sets. Again, this is an extension of set also. Then most important point that we'll talk about is domain, codomain and range of a function. This term, although we'll start the introduction in this chapter, but in upcoming chapters also, like trig and inverse trig, we'll talk about domain, codomain and range of those functions. Those has significant meaning in it. Okay. Then we'll talk about different types of functions: polynomial function, rational function, modulus, one of the most important type of function. Okay, if any question I have to create slightly difficult in maths, I'll introduce modulus. So you have to understand how modulus works. Okay, signum function, exponential functions, logarithmic function. Okay, greatest integer function. This will be a new thing that you'll study about. Their graphs, we'll talk about their graphs. Okay. One of the most challenging topic, I'll have to say, will be your next chapter, that is trigonometry, trigonometric functions. A lot of formulas are there. First of all, this chapter goes around the formulas, but more importantly, since you have a large number of formulas inside it, you'll have to think that what kind of question they'll be asking, and if a question is given to you, out of those formula, how do you choose which formula you should apply? So we'll deduce those things in this chapter, that different types of formulas, how they can be applied to different questions. How can we deduce the technique so that we know which formula to be used. Okay, we'll talk about measurement of angles, positive and negative angles. Their measurement will be in radians. Degree you have already studied. Means, if we talk about basic angle, the first thing that anyone studies about angle is that it is in degrees, but that's not the SI unit of angle. The SI unit of angle is radians. So now you'll have to study angles in radians also. Okay, so lot of trigonometric identities, double angles, sine cos tan, triple angles, sine cos tan, and then we'll learn about how to solve a trigonometric equation. So far we have done linear equations, one variable linear equation, two variables, maybe even three variables. You know how to factorize and get the solution. But how to solve a trigonometric equations, what kind of solutions are there? Okay, that will also be covered in this chapter. All right. Next chapter is called Principle of Mathematical Induction. It is actually a method to prove any formula is correct or not, to basically check if any given formula is correct or not. So you'll be given a series. Suppose I tell you 1 plus 2 plus 3 dot 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 up to n. It is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. So you'll have to check, we can check whether this formula is correct or not using the principle of mathematical induction. So this is quite subjective in nature. So a very least amount of knowledge is required for objective as such. But you have to understand how things actually work in this. There is a particular method, one method that proves how a series can be checked whether it's correct or not, and that method itself is the whole chapter. As simple as that. No variations, nothing. This is the idea. We have to check. Okay. So there are certain steps, 3 steps are there. Using those, you can check whether given formula is correct or not. Not any formula, a series formula basically. Okay. Then comes a complex number. So till grade 10th as such, if you remember something in grade 10th deals with the quadratic equation ax square plus bx plus c. Okay. And if you can recall, there was a value called as discriminant, and if d was less than 0, we used to say no real roots. Now that was till grade 10th. If I talk about the complex numbers start from here. No real roots, that means they are actually complex roots. So we'll talk about that. The beginning starts from square root of minus 1. Inside the square root, a number has to be positive. But what if the number becomes negative? We'll say it is not defined as such. Inside square root, negative number cannot come. But there we start with the concept of complex number. We'll start with this thing, square root of minus 1, how it is used. Okay, how we can get solutions for quadratic equation which are having no real roots. So we'll have complex roots. Okay, and we'll talk about something known as argand plane, pretty much similar as your x-axis, y-axis. It's just that the name of the axes are different. Okay. Then we'll talk about their algebra, how suppose I'll give you one simple example like I plus 2i. So we can apply normal algebra that we have studied. It is equal to 3i complex. So basic algebra, some things works, some things don't. So we have to talk about that. And we'll talk about the square root of the complex number itself. What if I give you square root of I? Means I is itself a square root of minus 1, but what if I ask you what is the square root of I? So we'll talk about that also in that particular chapter. Then linear inequalities. I think this will be very straightforward thing, linear inequalities, because the ideas and notions are very simple. So far you have solved something like x plus 3 equal to 0. Now inequalities you will be dealing with x plus 3 greater than 0 or less than 0 depending on the inequalities. So we have to solve something like this. We can solve this algebraically also, we can solve this graphically also. We'll talk about both kind of solutions. Okay, algebraic as well as graphical. Okay. Then we'll talk about a new kind of chapter that has slightly new idea, that is permutation and combination. If you have already studied, you have the idea, but this is something slightly different, I'll say. PNC, permutation and combination, it basically deals with your arrangement and combination of things. Okay, so like there are 5 balls, 5 different color balls, how many ways you can arrange them? Or you have 5 different numbers, how many different types of numbers can be formed? That kind of thing. Or suppose you are selecting a team of cricket. So in how many ways a team of cricket can be selected out of, let's say, 20 players? You have to select 11 players to play. How those combinations can work. Okay, so PNC, I'll say it is slightly tricky. You have to understand the concept because formulas are very limited. Okay, we will use formula itself, but it's the idea, it's the notion that's very complicated in this. Sometimes it may be. Okay, so thought process, I'll say for this chapter, your thought process is very important. PNC. Okay, next chapter we'll talk about is binomial. Now I'll give you a general idea. Basically we'll talk about a plus b raised to power n. So far you must know a plus b whole square, a plus b whole cube. What if the power is 5? What if the power is 6? That kind of expansion. We can do that using binomial theorem. That's the whole chapter. That's the whole gist of this chapter. And then while expansion, you will have some middle term. The question may ask you how many middle terms are there, what is the coefficient of the middle term, that kind of question. That's the main application of this. So higher expansions of power, that's binomial theorem. Next is sequence series. This one is pretty much formula based. Okay, AP arithmetic progression, pretty simple. Okay, GP almost same notion but slightly different idea. AP the difference between the terms are same. GP the ratio of the terms are same, means each term is being multiplied by one factor, whereas in AP each term is being added or subtracted by some factor. Okay, then we'll talk about some of n terms. Like in AP, everything is pretty much same as AP. AP will talk about general term, sum of n terms. Same thing in GP, general term, sum of n terms. And then there is a special case known as infinite GP. Sometimes it is used in not only this chapter but other chapters also. So infinite GP you should also understand. Okay, then we'll talk about arithmetic mean, geometric mean, the relation between them. Sometimes they ask that directly, that what is the relation between arithmetic mean and geometric mean. Okay, and then there is a special series known as summation k square, summation k cube. First of all, I'm not sure if you understand this notion of summation. If you do, it's a good thing. If you don't, anyways, I'll have to explain. So basically the idea is the one thing I told you, like 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n. This is known as summation k, basically from k equal to 1 to k equal to n. So there are direct formulas for this. I told you the formula is n into n plus 1 by 2. So we can see how those formulas are being derived, and more importantly we have to see the application of it, how we can use it to calculate different types of series. There is something called as AGP, arithmetic geometric progression. It means there is AP is also going on, simultaneously GP is also going on. Those kind of series, how we can solve that, those will have slightly different idea. Okay, then next chapter is straight line. So you must already know that any linear equation in two variables is nothing but a straight line. Now so far the understanding goes like if this is a equation ax plus by plus c equals to 0, this represents a straight line. Okay, so the equation is usually given to us and then we understand what kind of line is this. Now the idea will be different. They will give you the condition and they will ask you create the equation of line, a line that is passing through origin, a line that is at an angle of 45 degree on x-axis, 45 degree on y-axis, passing through that kind of point, perpendicular to some line. Those kind of conditions will be devised, and point is you have to create the equation of line. That's the key idea. Now various forms will be there. Okay, parallel to x-axis will be there, point slope form is there. Okay, so basically one word that we have to understand is slope. Okay, but that's a very key word in this chapter. So once you understand slope, then you have to understand different kinds of form, 2-point form, intercept form, normal form, general equation of line we'll talk about. I told you this is the general equation, and how can we calculate, suppose this is a line, how can we calculate a distance of a point from this line without actually drawing or anything? Okay. So straight line goes around creation of the equations of straight line based on the conditions that will be given to you. Okay. Next is conic section. Now conic section specifically deals with the different kinds of shapes that are present in your maths. We know that conic section basically means section of cone. So if we look at different section of cones, if you cut a cone horizontally, you get a circle. If you cut it at an angle, you get an ellipse. Similarly, there are many ways you can get different kinds of shape, parabola, hyperbola. So we'll talk about those kinds of shape. What are their equations, their standard equations, their properties. Okay. And for each shape, circle, ellipse, parabola, hyperbola, different parameters involved, what kind of equations they have, we have to study. Introduction to 3D, I'll say this one will be combining this with 12th 3D as such, because this one is very simple as such. Just an extension of basic coordinate. Like whatever you have studied in X and Y, same thing will be extended to Z. I'll give you an idea. Distance formula, that's from your standard grade, that is x2 minus x1 square plus y2 minus y1 square. That's if the point is in xy plane. What if it is present in 3D? Then Z will also be involved. So just an extension of the formula. That's it. There was a section formula also known as. So same thing, the section formula you used to do on x-axis, y-axis, same thing we have to do on z-axis also. And we have to understand the coordinate system. Like if I divide xy plane, it becomes 4 quadrants. But if we talk about in 3D, it is basically known as octant. So how can we locate a point in 3D? Like what is the meaning of 1, 2, 3? We have to understand that. We have to analyze this. And then very basic formula. And this one, I think it will be better if we combine it with 12th 3D, because this one is pretty much straightforward, not too much complication. Then from exam point of view, I've seen very papers. So one of the topic that was very common is limits. The question was always there on limits. Now limits is a very good topic. There are different ways to solve different kinds of limit. What is the meaning of limit? Then how we can solve different kinds of limit. The question will be very straightforward. He will ask you, solve this, limit x tends to 0, x tends to 2, like x minus 2, x square minus 4 upon x minus 2. Okay, something like that. Okay. So they will directly give you a question of limit and you have to solve it. Okay, that's it. You have to get the answer according to that. We'll understand the basic, what is the meaning of limits, and effectively the question will be directly that solve a particular kind of limit. So there are various types that we have to understand. Okay, logarithmic limit is there, trigonometric limit is there, algebraic limit is there. Okay, so all those things. Derivatives will combine it again with 12th differentiation. There's no point of doing this separately. This will be combined together with 12th differentiation. So limits will do, derivatives will do in one single go with 12th differentiation. Okay. Differentiation and integration, these are the key mathematical topic that will always be there, whether it is any exam, not just this exam, any exam. If 11th 12th mathematics is a part of it, differentiation and integration will be there. So must focus on this. We have to must focus on this. Okay. Mathematical reasoning, it's more of a English kind of chapter where you have to understand some symbols and what does they imply, and or, by and or, those kinds of things. What are the method of contradiction, contrapositive, converse. Okay, so not exactly a mathematics, there is some rules that you have to follow and will be able to do this mathematical reasoning. Okay. not that kind of reasoning that comes in aptitude and reasoning. Okay. Some rules are there, some symbols are there that we have to understand. Stats, again, slightly subjective topic, but objective ideas can be created around it. Okay, simple data can be given. You have to understand what is the this range, mean deviation, variance, standard deviation. Okay, what are the relation between them? That we have to understand. But the topic is subjective in nature, so if you have to understand in deep, you have to do subjective kind of questions. Okay, then only you will be able to apply the concept in objective. Probability, again, probability, it will be done once with 12th class topic. Probability, again, it will not be done separately, because grade 11th probability is pretty much same as sets, so nothing complicated there, and as such the real probability is in grade 12th maths. Okay, so for grade 11th maths, I'll not recommend this topic. Directly move to the topic that is of grade 12th. We'll cover that there only. Okay, now for the grade 12th part, the grade 12th will start with relation and function. Again, I told you that relation function in grade 11th, it will be combined with this. Okay, so we have to combine that. We have to study different kinds of relations: reflexive, symmetric, transitive, equivalence. The questions are usually based on this. You have to understand the definition, that what or how a function is reflexive in nature, symmetric in nature. Okay, and then another type, that is 1, 1 and onto. Okay, we have to slightly understand the concept of inverse of a function. There are a few topics as slightly different topic, that is binary operation. But if I say definition wise, reflexive, symmetric, transitive, very straightforward questions on those. 1, 1 and onto, again very important, direct straightforward questions on those. Binary and inverse usually are rarely touched. Okay, so these are very important, I'll say. This will cover, but not too much of a significance. Okay, then inverse trigonometric function, it's a good topic. Again, for this you have to be strong in trigonometry, otherwise you cannot do this topic. Your trigonometry has to be strong, because the same identities are being used in it. To solve any kind of inverse question, you should be comfortable with those identities of trigo. So we'll talk about the basic idea. I told you that domain range, we'll talk about this in trigo and as well as inverse trigo. Okay, there are graphs also, slight understanding of graphs, and more importantly the properties of inverse trigonometric functions. So those properties or the questions that will be required will somehow use the identities of trigonometry itself. Okay. Next topic is matrices and determinant. I'll say both of them are together as such, they are not too different. Like, you cannot study determinants without studying matrices. Okay, matrices are first of all the fundamental. There are different types of matrices that we have to understand: transpose of a matrix, symmetric, skew symmetric. Skew symmetric, symmetric, direct questions I've seen in previous year. They ask you to break down a matrix in symmetric and skew symmetric part. Straightforward question, nothing complicated here. The chapter actually are very simple, if I have to say. Then how we add them, multiply them. Okay, do remember that addition, subtraction is possible, multiplication is possible, but division of matrix, there is no such thing as division of matrix. Okay. Then their properties, commutative nature or associative nature, those kinds of properties. And then we'll talk about invertible matrix or inverse of a matrix. As such, this is done here also, but more importantly, it will be done in this determinant chapter, inverse of a matrix. So then we'll talk about what is determinant, how is it different from a matrix, different terminologies, minors, cofactors. How can we find what is the use of determinants? We can find the area of triangle. Then again, we have to find adjoint and inverse of a matrix. I told you that determinants you'll have to do inverse. It will be a major topic. very important one also. And the application is we can use it to solve a system of linear equation, specifically 3 variable. So for 3 variable equation x, y and z, we cannot do it as easily as for 2 variables. So for that we need determinants. Okay, but that kind of solution making again is very subjective in nature, but we have to understand the basic, and maybe a very specific kind of question or specific step can be asked based on that in objective. Then comes the most important part of completely grade 11th and 12th, that is calculus, that is differentiation and integration. A lot of chapters are there. First chapter, that is continuity and differentiability. Continuity is a small part of it. More importantly, it is differentiation. So we'll talk about how we can differentiate composite function, what is a chain rule, how can we differentiate inverse functions, implicit functions, how can we differentiate exponential, logarithmic, means any function, something that you can write mathematically, you'll learn how you can differentiate it. Okay. Then we can differentiate one time also, we can differentiate 2 times, 3 times. So we'll talk about order of differentiations also. 1 time differentiation means first order derivative, 2 time differentiation means second order derivatives. Those again we'll talk about those also. Differentiation of parametric function, again very important from objective point also. Rolle's theorem, Lagrange, again very important from objective, because they are not very lengthy problem. Objective you are supposed to solve problems that are quick, that can be easily done, not too many steps are required. So these topics, specifically differentiation, is very important from objective point of view. They can be done in subjective point of view also, but objectively one of the best topic, let's say. Then slightly complicated part, application of derivatives. Usually children have the tendency to avoid this chapter because it's slightly difficult to sometimes comprehend it. I'll try to explain it as easily as possible, but this topic is sometimes slightly difficult. Few topics are easy, you can target those first of all, like the basic application I'll say is rate of change. It's easy. Increasing, decreasing, again increasing, decreasing will be easy because in this you will be solving inequalities. So the chapter that you study in 11th maths, inequalities, that will be used here. Okay. Then tangents and normal, again this will use straight line. So straight line of 11th maths will be important. Without that you will be struggling in this again. Okay. Approximations, how I can use differentiation in approximation, and the most important topic and usually the troublesome topic is maxima minima. But again, the topic is difficult from subjective point of view. From objective point of view, it is very much limited, so you'll not have problem. Okay. Okay. Then we have to use those to simplify real life situations that we'll talk about, like maximize for a given surface area, maximize its volume, something like that. Okay. So after differentiation comes integration, and integration you have a lot of formats. Okay. So integration you have different types of formats, like how we can integrate these standard formulas. Again, a lot of formulas are there for integration, 20-30 formulas are there, but don't try to learn them as a formula itself. Try to apply it and it will automatically be inbuilt in your system effectively. If you keep mugging up the formulas, it will not help you. More importantly, just by formulas if I can say you can solve this chapter, no. It's the idea that's very important. Again, integration again is slightly difficult than differentiation. Reason being, the idea generation is difficult in this, how we can integrate, because integration requires rule to be followed, and without that rule we cannot generate any other step. Okay. So this is the most lengthy part. This is known as indefinite integral, because you can see that in the integration there is no limits present here. Sometimes limits are there, like integrate from 1 to 3. First of all, we'll talk about like what is the meaning of that. Basically it represents area. Okay, and how we can evaluate definite integral. Okay, so this was whole indefinite integral, this is definite integral. Definite integral is actually simpler to solve and very much applicable in objective. More importantly, this is subjective in nature but can be given in objective too, but definite integral for sure the first preference will be definite irrespective of your indefinite. I've seen one question in previous year that was something like this: 1 upon square root of x plus x integration 0 to 1. Okay, something like that. That was from previous year. Okay, then comes application. Okay, now application is same thing that I was talking about, that integration. If we talk about definite integral, that represents area. So basically we'll use this to find area under curves, different kind of curves. Again, very important from previous year point of view. Straightforward questions were there, like a line equation and a curve equation was given, and they were asking you the area between them, find the area between them. So line, circle can be combined, parabolas can be combined, ellipse separately or can be combined with lines, or these figures can be combined with themselves also. But usually that will be way too complicated. So usually the idea is to combine a line with either a circle or a parabola or a ellipse. That's the general idea. Okay, but I'm not saying the question cannot be created from two different circles or a circle and a parabola or ellipse. It can be, but again, very subjective in nature. Objective point of view, they have to give you simple ideas. Then comes differential equation. Now one different type of equation is differential equation. This time you will have an equation in which there will be a dy by dx, and somehow you have to generate what was the original function that follows those equation. Let's suppose I say dy by dx plus x equal to 0. So what is a function of y which satisfies this condition? We have to think. Okay, so there is a particular way to solve this. There are multiple ways. First of all, one second, solution of differential equation by method of separation, then homogeneous, and most important is linear. Again, very much important from objective point of view. Linear differential equation, they can usually from this particular topic, usually objective question is asking about IF, integrating factor, very straightforward. So that is nothing but integration itself. So differential equation itself consists of two parts. One part is integration, this whole part is integration. The starting part is known as differentiation. In this we will create the equation. I'll give you one equation and ask you to create a differential equation. So creation of differential equation is a separate thing, solution of differential equation is a separate thing, but the most important part is solution. Okay, and then when equation is given, we'll talk about order and degree. Usually we have learned these terms in linear expression, linear polynomials, just polynomials, linear, quadratic, cubic. We can categorize based on the degree. Now we'll talk about differential equations and their degrees, orders, how they are defined or not defined, whatever. Okay. Then comes vectors. Now if you are studying physics, I think this particular chapter will be very easy to you from physics point of view. Like you must already be knowing a lot of things if you have studied vectors in physics. Irrespective, I will assume zero knowledge and I will teach you from basic. Okay. But the maximum part comes from two topics known as dot product, cross product, sometimes triple product also, but more importantly these two are the major topics. Rest everything is just definition of different types of vectors, parallel vector, collinear vector, negative of a vector, how few things are vector and how few things are scalar, and everything simple enough. Okay. But dot product and cross product, they are fundamental here. Once you understand dot product and cross product, now comes the application part of it. That will be used in your 3D, the real 3D, not the one that was in 11th, because that was just an extension of formulas of x, y and z. This time you will talk about direction, cosine, direction ratio. What is the meaning of them? You'll not, if you have studied, you might know something about it. More importantly, you'll talk about equation of a line in 3D. Straight line was done in 11th maths also. That was in 2D, XY plane. Now we'll talk about straight line in 3D. Okay. Then different kinds of line, coplanar, skew lines, shortest distance between two lines. Then Cartesian and vector equation of plane also. After line, the difficult topic that makes 3D difficult slightly is planes, because problem is you can slightly analyze lines, but you cannot analyze plane very much easily in this 2D. The screen that you will watch is also 2D. So very difficult to comprehend sometimes. So anyways, the equation is always in vector and Cartesian form. Standard equations we have to follow. Okay. Then we have to find angle between two lines, two planes, a line and a plane. And what is the distance? Suppose there is a point. What is the perpendicular distance of a point from a plane itself? Okay. And not always plane is horizontal or vertical like this. Like in your rooms, the walls are horizontal, vertical, simple enough to understand. But it's not the always condition. A plane can be at any angle. Okay. The last two topics, linear programming. Again, very simple idea, I'll say. Objective questions are also very easy in this. This is an easy topic. And slight use of inequalities, graphical part specifically. Inequalities, graphical part more importantly. If you know how to solve inequalities graphically, that I'll teach you in grade 11th maths. This one will be pretty much same, very easy to solve. Okay. And the real probability of grade 12th, that will mostly working around conditional probability. Okay. Multiplication theorem of probability, what are independent events, total probability, and one of the most important topic is known as Bayes theorem. Very, very, very important. Okay. Bayes theorem, like the most important topic for this chapter is Bayes theorem. Okay. Conditional probability is basic, multiplication theorem is again basic, but those things combinedly will be applied in Bayes theorem. Means everything you study before this will be applied in Bayes theorem. Okay. Then random variable and the probability distribution. What is the meaning of random variable? How probability distribution is there? And again, some statistical part of random variable, that is mean and variance. Okay. And then there is something known as binomial distribution or Bernoulli's trials. Okay. So there was a chapter in grade 11, the binomial theorem. The idea is pretty much same, but somehow it is being related with the probability here. Okay. So a lot of topics to cover, a lot of things to be understood, but what I have seen from the papers, the questions are very much straightforward. Means if you do the fundamentals, if you just do the fundamentals correctly, the questions are pretty easy to solve as such. Okay, fine. I think that's more than enough introduction. For books, you can first of all refer to the notes. Second thing, solve previous year question. Lastly, if you really want to go in depth, then grade 11th, grade 12th maths NCERT is more than sufficient. No other books. That's it. Okay. Fine. I think we're done with this. All right. See you in the next class. Have a good day. Bye.